Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Jen and I typically talk about things that are happening in Sweden since I'm from here. I talk about my criticisms of feminism and modern culture and things like that. So if any of that interests you, be sure to subscribe to this channel, subscribe to my BitChute, like this video if you like this video, and be sure to comment down below on what you think about this discussion that we're having today. With me today, I have Sean from the YouTube channel Actual Justice Warrior. Sean is an American YouTuber who has been doing a really great job covering what's been happening on his side of the pond. He has been closely covering what's been happening with BLM, the lies coming from that movement, and the lies about the heroes within it. I thought today that we would spend some time to talk about what happened at Capitol Hill last week, the reactions following that, and also the way that it's been used to block Donald Trump from Twitter and other platforms. So, hope you enjoy. Hi, welcome, Sean.
Oh, thank you for having me.
How are
Glad
you
to
doing?
talk about the disaster.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
So, do you first just want to give us a little rundown of what took place at Capitol Hill on January 6th?
Oh, God. Well, from what I understand, a bunch of Trump supporters, they went to rally because it was the day that they were going to certify the presidential election. And then after like a Trump speech or some such thing, I forget exactly what led them to go over there. They decided to storm the Capitol, and it got really nasty. At first, it was just people like entering, and there's like photos and videos of people that are like, being nice to the cops and going in because you are actually allowed to go into Capitol Hill. There's some restricted areas that you can't go into, but in general, you can go in there. And then you start seeing pushing and shoving of police officers, and then you start seeing the broken windows and all that, and it all like spiraled or appeared to spiral downhill from there.
Why did the police allow this to happen? Many people have, from both the left and the right, noted how short the police presence was and how non-aggressive they were up until the point that the rioters were actually inside the building. Why do you think that is? And like you said, like some people will just calmly walking into the building and then all of a sudden like this commotion took place.
Well, I think there's a couple of different factors. First, it's like you are allowed to go into the Capitol even if you're protesting representatives. So it didn't look like it was going to turn violent immediately. The second thing is like there's just not that many Capitol Hill police officers. Like their police force is only 2,300 people. So anytime you have a crowd, I've seen a lot of like criticisms that they were outnumbered. It's like, well, yeah, of course they're outnumbered. There's more people than police officers. That's how it works. You can't have a giant like million-man strong police department. And then the third thing is that it kind of spiraled after the fact, and it's not like we've seen a bunch of like Trump people rioting throughout the course of the last year. Like that has been reserved for the left. So there's like this great picture that people post of like the police all like decked out in military gear ahead of the Lincoln statue, and they're like, wow, look at their response to BLM versus this, when in reality that picture's from June 2nd. They started rioting the day after George Floyd died, which was May 27th. So this was 5 straight days of them destroying stuff in every major city and targeting statues, and they were guarding the Lincoln Monument, which people who had already destroyed statues said they were coming for. It's like a difference in what you're expecting. And again, the police are always in a bad position because if they show up in force, like in that photo, and they deter anything from happening, people are going to say, well, look how authoritarian the police are. They're cracking down and nothing happened, even though nothing happened because all those police were there. And if they show up and they decide, it's First Amendment, we're going to let people protest, and it spirals out of control. It's like, oh, where were the police all of a sudden? So they're in a lose-lose situation.
I feel kind of from like an outsider watching in, I feel that the police in America has kind of set the precedent that they cannot act when you have these riots or these protests, as they are called. And that's kind of a continuation here at the Capitol Hill. And then it's kind of weird that the left, who are saying that the police violence is so bad that they wanted them to be violent on this day, at this time, at this event. Right. I don't really... What is
It's especially because they killed a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Like they called the National Guard within like same day. I remember the BLM riots, the governors were refusing the National Guard. And in Portland, it took something like 30 days for the federal police to show up to protect the
Mhm.
federal courthouse, and they were criticized heavily for it. The National Guard was in there within like a few hours. Like they were called, they arrived, and they kind of put down whatever was going on pretty quickly. So like the idea that the police were not forceful enough is strange. And there's some videos I've seen people say, "Oh, they opened the barricade in this location." And if you look at the video, it's like 14 seconds. You can't understand the geography of how close it is to Capitol Hill. I'm from the U.S. I've never been to D.C. like that,
Mhm.
so I don't know where this is. And it looks like there's four cops and a whole mob of people. Like, what are they supposed to do? Like, take out their batons and beat back like 600 people? Like, it's called a strategic retreat. They open the barricades because they're trying to get you to go somewhere else. It's not like a conspiracy, but people just get hyped up on it.
Mhm. Yeah, and I've seen people are not talking about this woman who was actually shot in the neck by the police. Like I think the conversation would have been very differently if it was a black woman at a BLM. Like even if they were, because they have been like they took over a police station on the first day of rioting. This is not something that would be above them to do. And could you talk a little bit about, because there were 5 deaths, right? So there
Right.
was this woman who was shot in the neck, and then there was one. Can you tell me, did he tase himself and get a heart attack?
That's the reports. I had commenters tell me that's not true, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of goofy. Like he might have just had a heart attack.
Okay.
Uh, but honestly, there's really two people that are dead that like is what should be concerned about. There's three that died that are reported as medical emergencies, and I'm not downplaying that because to their relatives they're just as dead. But if you
Hmm.
like have a heart attack because you're all excited, it's not the same thing as the police officer that was killed because he was hit over the head with a fire
Mm.
extinguisher, or the woman who was shot by the cops because she breached that area. So like they're like it's one of the things they downplay the death toll in like the BLM riots, even though
Hmm.
it's people being shot like over TVs and like stuff that's directly connected to the rioting, and then they hype up the death toll for this one because it's a Trump event, even though again it's like 3 of the 5 died from like some kind of medical related condition that maybe they weren't able to get like the ambulance or the paramedics there in time, and that's why they died. Maybe it had nothing to do with that, and it was just like you have a heart attack in a crowd of people, that's what happens. But
Hmm.
it actually gets ridiculous because there's a police officer that killed himself 3 days later, and all the headlines were like police officer, a Capitol Hill police officer kills himself like 3 days after the Trump riots, and it's like, but it has nothing to that
No.
that has nothing to do with anything.
No, and isn't it? Yeah, I remember a story from Chaz where the medical personnel could not make it into Chaz because the BLM had taken over Chaz. Is that not the same, or
Right.
you
Well,
know?
that one's a little different because when you see that woman get shot in the neck, like they do clear a path for her, like and for the paramedics to take her out. In Chaz, they were not letting the paramedics in because the paramedics didn't want to go in where there's people armed to a
Hmm.
shooting. They don't know who the shooter is without the police, so they didn't want to let the police in. So that like 16-year-old kid that was shot multiple times by the Chaz police, like they were blocking the paramedics for going in. And like I remember the left was like, well, they should have just let the people in Chaz carry out the gunshot wounded person to the paramedics. Like yeah, I'm not a doctor, I've never been a paramedic or anything like that, but I'm pretty sure like an average citizen, like that the Antifa medics have water bottles. Like that's what they do. They pour water on you, like if
Hmm.
you're hurt. So like I'm pretty sure like somebody's medical training that extends all the way to dumping water on a gunshot wound shouldn't be moving an injured person. Like you should let the professionals do that. But they blocked off multiple people from doing that, and 2 people died at Chaz.
Did Donald Trump encourage this Capitol Hill event? Did he directly call for these actions? Do you think that these actions prove further that Donald Trump is the dictator like figure that the left has been describing him as all along, threatening the democratic system of America, or has his actions and words in this matter been twisted?
I mean, I think I think encourage is different from directly call for. Like he didn't directly call for people to invade Capitol Hill and force the members of Congress into hiding and all of that. Did he encourage it? I mean, he tweeted out, he's like, "I love you guys," like while they're going into Capitol Hill. Like that is encouragement. He's been hyping up the election fraud and that Congress was doing this and hyping up this day. So he did encourage people to come to DC, but like whether he directly incited this, which is like the charge, no, it's
No.
not the case.
Didn't he also multiple times state that he wanted these protests to be peaceful?
Right.
And is this
Yeah,
different?
no, he did. But like if he released a video statement eventually, like during the course of the day, where he was like, go home, like get out of the Capitol, don't attack the police and all that. And that's all good stuff. But like you compare that to Mike Pence's statement, which was like immediate.
Mm-hmm.
And like you can see there is a difference because Trump has this thing where if somebody's nice to him or promoting him, he likes them. So like while he definitely doesn't want people to hurt police officers or anything like that, this is a guy who calls the family of police officers that are killed throughout the country to like talk to them because like he's just like he's like anything that's in a uniform, he's pro it.
Mm-hmm.
And so like he's not encouraging the violence, but he was definitely like encouraging his supporters to come out and protest. They
Mm-hmm.
kind of spiraled out into violence. And it was again like a small portion of them, but a small portion is enough to put like the Capitol on high alert and to have members of Congress hiding there. So I don't think he incited it. I don't think he did anything criminal, but like yeah, he's like the election is stolen. They're certifying the election today in Capitol Hill and then protesters went over to Capitol Hill. Like normally that's fine as long as there's no violence. Unfortunately, there was violence.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that he was able to foresee that this this would get
No,
violent?
no, because he. I mean, like we have to like have the context of sure there were like talk about how there's going to be a revolution and all that from unlike right wing Twitter and all that, but like the right wing has not been the driving force of violence in this country. Just not the case. Like they've been overwhelmingly peaceful. All of the violence that's been connected to them has typically been either lone wolf people, like single actors, or left wing people attacking them. And then we watch the video and they're like, look, they punched this person back.
Mm-hmm.
How dare they? Like they have not been going out and committing violence like the left has. So I don't think he necessarily would have foresaw this. I mean maybe in like his mind he thought all these people come around into the Congress, they like yell at them, and then the Congress votes in the way that he wants to vote on the certification of the election, which, by the way, people call the coup, but it is like a procedural thing that Congress either certifies the election or doesn't certify the election. So it's like he was getting his supporters to pressure people for a vote. I don't think he intended for it to be violent.
Mm-hmm. How would you compare his statements to, let's say, left wing or democratic politicians after violence caused by BLM or other left wing activists?
It depends on the statement and it depends on the person, and it depends on when, because Ted Wheeler, the mayor of Portland, like didn't think Antifa existed up until he won his election. Like 2 weeks ago, he finally said Antifa was bad and all that, but they were like rioting in his city since May.
Mm-hmm.
And they were actually doing violence even before May, just not to the scale that was happening. So in term like his statement, he did condemn it like after the fact. He did tell people like he doesn't want them hurting police officers and all that. He tried to calm it down. He's like reading off the teleprompter, clearly a speech not written by him, but like politicians don't typically write their speeches. But if you compare that to Kamala Harris, the VP or incoming VP, bailing out rioters, like tweeting out the bailout links for
Mm-hmm.
rioters in Minneapolis, or any of the or Joe Biden saying Antifa doesn't exist, repeating their propaganda on the debate stage that they're an idea. Like it's not even close. And you have a bunch of people saying like Ocasio Cortez, protests are supposed to make people uncomfortable. You have to make your leaders uncomfortable. And Maxine Waters saying confront politicians, not like in Capitol Hill, in Congress, where you're allowed to go to their offices, yell at them, protest, whatever you got to do, you're allowed to do that. She's like, confront them at the gas station. Like if you see your congressman pumping gas and they're a Republican, go up to them and shout at them, confront them in restaurants. So it's like the difference in scale on how much the left has encouraged violence and excused it. Remember, they're like, rioting is the voice of the unheard. John Oliver played that, like there was like some woman, like that was I don't want to describe her because I'd only be able to describe her in rude ways. But there was a woman in Minneapolis, and she was like excusing the rioting and the burning of the Target, and she's like, "Well, we don't own Target, so that makes it okay." And they play that on television. So like the scale of excusing, bailing out, lying for, providing cover is it's nowhere even close. Because every Republican has condemned these actions.
Yeah. Do you think that the actions taken by, and this is just a, do you think that these actions in any way represent Trump supporters or Republicans as a whole?
I mean, I think they represent a small portion of them, but not like as a whole. Because again, this is like one event that's happened in years. Like it's like they say this and then they're like, oh, it's like Charlottesville 2.0. Charlottesville was in 2017. Like I can name 20 different events from BLM that were all back to back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like New York, every window smashed in Fifth Avenue. Minneapolis, all the grocery stores being burned down to the point where they actually have to have charities donate groceries and diapers to the residents of Minneapolis. Uh, what you call it? Chicago, where they were like looting the train that was transporting TVs. Like every major city, Portland, Seattle, like Chaz, they have the Portland zone, the courthouse. Like there's so many different events, it's almost impossible to name all of them. And we didn't even get into, I didn't even mention St. Louis where David Dorn was killed, like on the street in front of a pawn shop. Like they have to go back to Charlottesville, like 2.0. Even though Charlottesville is one guy among a group of people that drove his car into somebody. It's just not, there's like a complete difference in scale, and I don't think it represents Trump supporters who have been taking it on the chin by the media and by Antifa for years.
Yeah. So why do you think this attack on Capitol Hill is being successfully used to paint 75 million Americans as hooligans? Why has this rhetoric not even closely been successful in similar situations with the left?
Oh, I mean, because the media is overwhelmingly supportive of the left. And on top of that, like Trump is coming out of power. So like Republicans need an excuse to distance themselves from Trump. So like this is like it was going to happen eventually. Like after Biden took office, it was going to happen because like people will follow you like through anything until you're a loser. It's like Hillary Clinton. Like the Clintons were considered big winners in American politics, even though they had the shady past and all that. But once Hillary Clinton lost, Democrats don't want to talk about her because she's not a winner anymore. So like after Trump loses, the Republicans were looking for an excuse to break with him. They lost the special elections that same morning. It was announced that they lost both seats in the Senate. So sticking with Trump didn't work as a strategy. And then this happened. So it's like a very convenient excuse for everybody to be like, you know what? It's over. We're done with Trump. Like it's done. Like we don't like, because now they feel like they don't have to cater to him. So his defenders are gone for the most part. And the media got exactly what they wanted. Like I'm not saying they wanted people to die or anything, but they got an event that they could pin on Trump supporters as acting poorly.
But how do you think middle America is reacting to this? Do you think that there's a disconnect? Well, I know there's a disconnect between what the media is portraying and what they're seeing play out before their eyes. What do you think the effects of that will be, or the consequences of that?
I mean, we'll have to see in terms of politics. Maybe for the midterm elections, there'll be some consequences and fallout from it. We see Biden already pushing some like domestic terrorism legislation, and I just like have to imagine if you're watching this on TV and you're like me, it looks pretty bad because in this past year, I work from home, so I didn't really have my life destroyed by the pandemic or something like that and by BLM riders. But if you're like a business owner and you were losing business due to a pandemic, and then people smashed your business, they torched it, and then you find out that the insurance only doesn't even cover the amount that it costs to condemn the building, and you're looking at Capitol Hill and you're like, yeah, that's bad. But then again, like they smashed a few windows, didn't light any fires. My whole life is obliterated. Like there's entire blocks in this country that look like they were bombed, like bombed by the U.S. in like Iraq or something. Like that's how
Mm-hmm.
bad it looks. I can just imagine how they're feeling looking at members of Congress, knowing that they're gonna finance the fixing of their building, but like their lives are torched, and the media just provided cover for it. Because remember, like they did break windows. I didn't see very many fires in businesses. I didn't see people looting TVs or anything like that. So even though it's definitely bad, it's not a good look. Like the scale of this is just not in proportion to the reaction. But again, it's like members of Congress, if you're already in that mode where you're like the elites don't care about us, they only care about themselves, then like that's going to anger you because what shows you more that they care more about themselves or way more about themselves than you than them being upset over the destruction of federal property. No Congress people were injured. A police officer did die. Don't discount that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But like the destruction of federal property that's going to get paid for, that's owned by the taxpayer, versus like the destruction of citizens, and like the response to that being, well, protests are supposed to make you uncomfortable. Well, they just don't feel heard, so they had to torch your business.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you don't understand. A guy died in Minneapolis. A knee was on his neck in Minneapolis, so they had to destroy your business in St. Louis, Detroit, New York City, Boston, Los Angeles. They had to do that. Like so, I think this will play into that, the elites versus the average person, which is like a big thing that's being pushed in American politics now.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah. I can see that. What do you think about the censorship of Donald Trump and of people who support him?
So I have been big on saying that Trump was going to get banned from Twitter after he left office. Like they would find an excuse,
Mm-hmm.
and this is like the symbolic day of when he's like out of power. The Republicans abandoned him. He had to release a video. He's like Biden won the election, and they just straight up banned him. And they banned him. It's not only on Twitter, which is probably his biggest, most notable method of communication. They banned him on Spotify, Snapchat, TikTok, like there's like a list. I have it in my video where it's like a photo of Trump and all these like things that they banned him on. And you understand some of them. You're like, oh, okay, they banned him on Facebook and Twitter because they kind of work in tandem. And like these other and Instagram, you're like, I guess like Trump's not really dropping selfies on the internet. And they restricted him on YouTube. And then, but it's like all these other sites, they're like banning him just to get credit. Like they banned him on like I think they banned him on the iTunes or something related to Apple that like I didn't even know he was communicating with people through there. It's just like what these companies already wanted to do, and this is a convenient excuse, and what they were going to do once he was out of power. But I think the precedent is really dangerous because they banned him while he's still technically the president.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that like we don't ban the Ayatollah of Iran for calling for like the destruction of a certain religious group of people, like on Twitter. Like we don't ban
Mm-hmm.
them. The Iranian account is there. We don't ban Chinese propagandists. We don't ban the North Korean Twitter account. It's not banned, and they threaten to nuke people.
Yeah.
And but like Trump gets banned because he said "I love you" to certain supporters, like during which he shouldn't have said, but like he got banned from that, and he got banned because like they don't like that he's popular on Twitter. And then they took it a step further because he got banned. People reacted by moving to Parler, and then you had Ocasio Cortez and other members of Congress pressuring the Apple Store and Google Play Store to ban Parler, which they did. So it's the crackdown that they always wanted. It's just magnified and concentrated into one area. We've seen this spread out over years, and now it's all focused into like a couple of days.
Yeah. What do you think that means for people like you and me, for like YouTubers or for just regular right wingers who like to talk online? Do you think that like this has been used to censor us as well? I mean, it's easy to look at the president of the United States and people are like, "Oh, well, he doesn't need a pity party or whatever," the leftist rhetoric surrounding that, but it means something more for us as well. What do you think? How do you think that we could battle that sort of censorship? Do you think that there's a future for apps like Parler, and will we successfully be able to move people to those platforms?
Right. I mean, it depends. It depends on it depends on like how movable your audience is. Like I tell people to go follow me on Parler, Minds, like all these alternates that I have linked in my description, and it's not a huge chunk of them that move over. So it is worrying. And like I'm primarily on YouTube, like you're on YouTube as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no alternative to YouTube. Like BitChute is like it exists, but BitChute is not even in HD. It's 720. And like the big thing about BitChute is that it's supposed to port over your videos as you upload them. I've been on BitChute for almost a year now. It's never once did that. So like they're not really like the alternatives are not set up properly, and I love people for trying to do that, but I think the problem is that they're trying to be like the exact same thing that YouTube is, but they only want to pull over the political YouTubers. Like they don't think to target maybe like YouTubers that aren't political, that actually bring in viewers that are getting demonetized for like different kinds of reasons.
Yeah.
Like true crime is a great example. They'll get demonetized, but it's because they're covering like certain topics. But like true crime is like a revenue generating kind of thing. Like that's why TV does it all the time. Like they always try to make it for political YouTubers. And if it were the people that are getting things demonetized and getting people banned, that's not who you want to start with, because the reason YouTube works is because of all the normies.
Yeah.
Like the
exactly.
makeup channels and all these people, they, like they make it viable for the general public. Anytime you try to have like a focused political thing, it's not going to work.
Yeah,
And I
no,
think that's why these are failing.
I completely agree. I don't think YouTube's problem necessarily is only the political content. They want to be TV. They don't want to listen to individual creators. And I definitely think that these BitChute and like Library. I think I'm going to post all of my videos on Library and BitChute because I need to move everything over because I feel like they're just shutting down channels left and right. But yeah, I do think that they should be looking at more creators and not just the political ones. Absolutely.
Like I moved to like the I'm not moved to, but I got contacted by the like Utreon people. I always forget how it's pronounced. That's a problem for them too, because I'm not even sure how it's pronounced. Like I got contacted by them, and like they said, listen, if you create an account with us, we'll port over your entire backlog, and they did it, and I appreciate it. And I think that like that's a good way to bring people over. It's like, hey, we'll do like the back end. That's what BitChute is supposed to be able to do for your uploads going forward. They did my whole backlog, so I really appreciated that. But I go on the Utreon page, and even though I promote it on Twitter in a video and all that, and there's like 4 or 5 views because there's just no audience there. Like it's you have to figure out a way to get the audience, because you can't have a situation where everybody's uploading videos and nobody's watching them.
Yeah.
Like on your platform. And that's just like it's just one of the many like hurdles. I mentioned like maybe it's not the best thing to do an exact copy of YouTube. Maybe you do something different. Like Spotify was like audio and like music, and then they started bringing over podcasters, and now they're trying to include video. So like they established themselves as something different before moving into YouTube's territory. The biggest app explosion recently has been TikTok, and they're like very short videos, and in the future that could evolve into something else. But like where they compete with YouTube is they have short videos that are supposed to be funny that could go viral. And like YouTube, one of the things you notice about it is like there's no real viral videos on it anymore. Like it's all like it seems like very staged to what it used to be. Because it used to be there was a chance you post a video on YouTube and 5 million people see it. It makes the local news, and then it makes the national news because it's funny. That doesn't happen anymore.
No.
Like you're basically grinding slowly to get the content that you want for like a more demanding algorithm, and that's why a lot of people switch to like low energy podcasts.
Yeah, no, but I think also we have to I mean, you mentioned that it's hard to get your audience over to these other platforms. I think there has to be a much larger push to like just stop using platforms like YouTube, stop using platforms like Twitter, and stop. And I'm not really seeing the energy needed for that, and I don't really know how to get that energy going, like to get people excited about doing that and excited about spending the time needed to build these platforms and to make. I mean, I don't know how Parler, they shut that down like yesterday, right? Because I haven't been able to use it.
They shut them down on the App Store, but there was like some crashing issues with Parler because so many people after Trump was banned were going over to Parler. So that like the website and the app, like if you had it already downloaded, it still worked. It was just like they were flooded with a bunch of people because they banned Trump. So a bunch of Trump supporters like went over to Parler. But the removal from the Google App Store and the Apple Play Store or whatever they call the Apple one, like that was devastating. And I thought like Apple and Google were like 90 something percent of apps in the United States, right? Because everybody has Android or iOS. It turns out they're 99% of the app stores in the world. So like if you get banned from iTunes and Google, you're done. Like, and the idea that they would do that under pressure from members of Congress, like I understand in certain European countries where you don't have the same rules about free speech, but like Congress can not only not do anything to restrict speech, but they can't do anything that would chill speech, which is like things that are not necessarily a formal restriction. So like to see members of Congress just do that right away and claim that the Capitol Hill thing was organized on Parler when it was organized on Twitter. That's how I heard about it. Like in the first place, that all these people were going there January 6th is ridiculous.
Yeah. No, and there's these huge, like, I see left-wingers all of a sudden caring so much about the free market and saying that, oh, well, this is a free, it's, what do you, I forgot the term in English.
It's like the free market is making its decision. It's freedom of association. Like they care about that so much, except like that works for a mega corporation, two mega corporations that have 99% of market share, which would be a monopoly, which even in Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations, no good when you have a monopoly making restrictions. But try to have a guy that's religious in the state of Colorado, one in a bunch of cake shops, say that he doesn't want to bake a cake for a gay wedding. And it's literally a national incident. Like that went all the way up to the Supreme Court, even though the couple in question actually targeted that bakery to specifically create a lawsuit. Like they lived in Massachusetts. They targeted a baker in Colorado in order to make a federal case about it. That is discrimination that we need to work on and stop. And again, even then, it was in Colorado before gay marriage was legal in Colorado. That's something that's a national travesty. This one cake shop owner that doesn't want to bake this one cake and put a message he doesn't believe in. But like these international companies that control 99% of the market, no, that's the free market. That's fine. That's fine. Whatever.
Yeah. I just have one more question for you. So if we go back to the rioting and what happened at Capitol Hill and kind of like what's been going on in America recently, do you think that there is a civil war brewing in America? What would a modern civil war in the U.S. even look like?
I don't think so. I know that's like a big Tim Pool gets made fun of all the time because he says civil war a little too often for somebody with that large of an audience, but yeah, I don't think we're on the cusp of a civil war. Like we haven't had we've had people fight in the streets over politics, but we haven't had like people like killing each other. And I mean like one side shoots the other side and the other side shoots back. Like it hasn't been like a big thing. And most people are not interested in this. Like a civil war, the Civil War in the United States killed more people than any other war the United States have ever been in. And like most people are not following politics at all day to day, let alone willing to go invade, a state to like get it under control. There's no government officials that are like ready to secede from the Union or even promoting like an armed insurrection or anything like that. What I think is going to happen is you're going to have Republican attorney generals in the states become the opposition again and try to fight Biden and his administration through the courts. And since the right is in the opposition and not the left, you're going to see less violence in the streets throughout the Biden administration than you saw throughout the Trump administration.
Okay. But do you think that this, I mean, it kind of sounds to me like, okay, well, the left is not in opposition anymore, so now we won't have any violence. And then when you get a right wing president again, are you going to just expect and accept that when there's a right wing politician, then the left wingers are gonna go crazy?
Yeah. Oh, especially since they're already like to a certain extent, Trump is a unique figure in that people already had like very like they had very set opinions of him. Like one of the things I didn't like about the Trump administration is like average people in my day-to-day life that never follow politics had a strong opinion about him because
Mm-hmm.
he's just that polarizing of a figure. So to a certain extent, it will probably be less, hopefully, than what went on this last 4 years. But also the media and even online media that supposedly pretend to be moderate are already talking about the next Trump. They're like the next
Mm,
fascist
yeah.
dictator that will come to power won't be as dumb as Trump. They'll be more sophisticated, and we have to watch out for it. So they're already trying to like prime their audience for that. But the thing is in 4 years, like people will have forgotten a lot about Trump. Like it's not going to be like it's like there was a lot of like people who didn't like Obama, and that kind of died down because he's no longer the person throughout the Trump administration. So when we get to the next thing, it's not going to be somebody like Trump that's going to like, speak off the cuff and like scare a bunch of people. So it's not going to have that same like fervor. Like for some reason, and I think it's just the way that Trump talks. He doesn't talk like a politician. He's very like aggressive. It just said like he'll joke around on like stuff, and it makes like the left who likes to take him seriously and in the worst way possible, like really angry. Like it makes easy fodder for them to cut him out of context and like show whatever they want to show. But like it's not. I don't see the same amount of energy for like a Marco Rubio if he were to win.
Mm-hmm.
Like straight up establishment Republican.
But I mean, at the same time, you have. Do you think that those, I don't know how many, like 75 million people who voted for Trump, do you think that they are just going to be able to forgive and forget being called racists and bigots and baskets of
No,
deplorables for 4 years and then just be like, oh, okay, that's fine. I'm just going to. I don't know. Do you think that the trust in media, for example, is going to come back? Do you think.
no, they're not going to forget the media, and it's almost like a kamikaze mission by the media to destroy Trump because they need him to be relevant. Like nobody after Trump's out of office, like there's no reason to watch CNN because it's boring, bad content. Like
Mm-hmm.
the reason people watch CNN during the Trump administration is because they didn't like Trump, and that's what they covered like 24/7. So like them like basically waging war on the airwaves against Trump, and then him being out of power essentially it signs their own death warrant because it's not going to be nobody's going to watch them like do puff pieces about Joe Biden. Like they don't care. Like Trump was the draw, he was the headline. So not only is it like so Trump supporters won't forget, but like the left who was animated by hatred for Trump, they're not going to be that enthusiastic, 4 years from now when Joe Biden's running again, or when Kamala Harris might be running if Joe Biden decides to step down, which I don't think he'll do. Like it's not gonna be like that. Like the left is gonna forget because they're gonna be like, oh well, we defeated Orange Hitler, therefore like we can move on and go home. Everything is restored to normal.
Well, thank you for joining me today, Sean. Do you have anything to add to this conversation before we round things off?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad time in America. I'm not looking forward to Inauguration Day. I think if anything is going to get worse, it's going to be that day. That's why I'm very much in the camp of saying, don't go to the Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who tells you to go to the Capitol is not your friend, especially when the cops shot somebody. They called the National Guard day one, and the media is talking like, and I'm going to do a video about this. They're like, well, the police didn't respond harsh enough. They didn't use enough force.
Mm-hmm.
If people go to the Capitol again, it's going to be significantly worse.
Yeah.
And I just don't want that to happen. It's not worth it. Like you're not going to make Trump president. Like it was over as soon as the mail-in voting system was set up for this election. Like the battle was lost. Like there was no way, and I think I made a video way back in November. I was like, there was no way that Trump was going to overturn more than one state in the courts. So once it was like 3 or 4 states, it was over. So don't go out there. Don't like if you want to protest, that's fine, but like don't try to storm a building. Don't try to overthrow the government. Whoever's telling you to do that is not your friend. Point them out, take a photo of them, and like turn them over to law enforcement. Just don't get involved because it is a disaster. Like stay home. It's also a pandemic last time I checked. I just no. Biden shouldn't even have an inauguration. He should have a private ceremony because it's a pandemic, right? He's the mask guy. But yeah, just it's not worth it.
I feel like there's a pandemic
politics is not worth your life.
It feels like it's a pandemic when it fits, when it suits you, then it's a pandemic, and when it doesn't, it's
no. The pandemic has political views,
yeah,
like, obviously,
right.
It understands that the cause of BLM. And by the way, the big thing, just to close, if like you didn't realize how biased the media was, it was in Michigan before George Floyd died, when protesters were protesting in the Michigan Capitol. How the media covered that versus, and that nobody was hurt, versus how the media covered the next week when people were destroying cities. Like those protesters were killing people, and then when it was BLM, it was like actually racism is the real virus in America. So, yeah.
Yeah, right. Where can so I think where can my viewers find you?
You can find me on YouTube. I have the channel Actual Justice Warrior. All my links are under every single video, but I'm also at Twitter at I am Sean 90. I'm at Parler, and I believe I'm at Actual Justice Warrior on Parler. And yeah, just YouTube channel has all the links and all that. It's not that hard to find.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm not very good at concluding interviews or concluding my own videos, but I want to say a big thank you again to Sean for doing this interview with me, and I want to say thank you to everyone who's been listening. Big thank you to all of my Patreons. I will be releasing a video this week where I'm going to talk a little bit more about this and to talk a little bit more about the implications that I see from this and what I think that we should be doing going forward, and a little bit about what I'm going to be doing with this new year, 2021. We made it. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.